Welcome to the second session of Ostelea Digitalization seminars. Today we are with Kayla Madsen, Director of Business Development and Translations.com, a company that offers language solutions around the world. Kayla Madsen will explain us how machine solutions along with high qualified human resources are overcoming huge challenges in the hospitality sector. For 40 minutes, more or less, Kayla and I will talk about relevant aspects related with language and digitalization. And afterwards, the public and the audience will have 20 minutes to ask questions. But let's begin. First, let's introduce our guest, Kayla Madsen. Our previous guest, Ainhoa Raso, explained us that she built her professional career incorporating knowledge from different areas. In your case, how did you do it? Did you know that you wanted to be a CEO in a multinational? Did you have this idea clear from the beginning, or you just went and and follow different paths?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maria. I did not, and I think it's reassuring to this travel and tourism climate, right? That we've been speaking to different schools and younger professionals on, oh wow, I studied tourism and now what do I do? Don't worry, because I studied Spanish language and literature and international studies with a major, like a concentration or a major in internationalization and trade. And so it does kind of sound perfect for the job that I have now, but there's no way when I studied that I knew that this is what I would be doing. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to travel. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to work for like a multinational or international company that had, different cultures and different aspects. And I wanted to, make an impact or help people. And so I moved to Spain with 4 suitcases in 2010 after one of like the worst economic crisis. Well, we'll see about this one, but at that time. And I moved in with my partner and I just started looking for jobs. And I began working at a small Spanish translation company. And after having success there for a few years working with international clients, I realized I wanted to make a jump to a bigger company, and that's how I made it to TransPerfect, where I've now been almost 8 years.
So, like a few years ago, companies were asking for very huge specialization, but I have the feeling that now they are looking more for an eclectic background, a person who can translate different languages, not meaning also different languages like Spanish or English, but also who can understand different logics, like the logic of the technology and in the softwares and so on. In your experience, how do you think this eclectic background, academic background, has helped you to build the career you have now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that one of the biggest things I would say that has really pushed me through to where I am today is a few things. I would say curiosity. I think this being curious, and asking questions and wanting to learn why things work and how they work, and not just taking the first answer as the only answer. I also think just having like a customer-centric focus. So, always thinking like, okay, the client is, the most important person. How can we help the client? How can we improve the process? Like I would always put myself in the shoes of the client or the person I was working with. And so, for example, I think, just being client-centric or even, having empathy. And then lastly, I would say just like perseverance and drive, like just wanting to keep getting better and growing and investing in myself and knowing that like I had something to give and I just needed to find my path.
So we were talking before having this little interview, we were talking about the role of curiosity and the importance of asking questions yourself and trying to learn every day new things, because that is changing so much also in the digitalization sector and in the tourist sector. And apart from curiosity, that I think it's a big important aspect building a professional career, what other aspects would you think are relevant to build a career in digitalization and in tourism?
Yeah, I think that another important part of it for your career is again kind of that investing in yourself, right? I think a lot of times when we start and we're young, we expect things to happen or to be given to us, and I think sometimes we have to take like control of our own, path in life and say, what do I like? What do I want to spend my time in? And kind of reflect on that, right? Whether it be through, a SWOT analysis or journaling, and really trying to understand, like, not just letting life happen at us, but us trying to understand what's happening and what it is that we like and what we value. So I think investing time and taking time to listen to yourself is really important one. I also think that, for example, like continued learning and training is super critical. That's one of the things that I was really blessed at TransPerfect to have, was just ongoing training. So learning new things, signing up for new courses, reading new books, whether that be on innovation, on digital, on business, on finance, like just understanding the world more. And I think, again, that ties back to being curious. If you're more informed, if you understand how things work, if you read the news, you understand how the world works, and then that makes you better at your job.
And in translations.com, what kind of digital solutions do you offer to tourist sector?
Yeah, absolutely. We offer a lot, as you know, when we spoke before. So we work with some of the top brands in the travel industry, including, just to name a few, like Delta, Emirates, United, Hilton, Marriott, Avis, Pan Pacific, Iberostar, NH, Radisson. So that's just to name a few, but a couple of the cool things that we do for these brands that, like, I had wanted to mention the other day was, so say for example, with TUI and Royal Caribbean, we provide app localization. And so basically it's like real-time app localization, where anytime they do a new release or update content on their app, that gets sent through an automated workflow. It gets translated by human translators in all the languages, and then it gets sent back into the app. And so if any of you follow me on LinkedIn, I talk a lot about how you have to reduce copying, pasting, and manual versions and sending Excels and documents. And so this tool basically helps automate the whole workflow around app localization. And similarly, we do that same.
You were trying to explain me the first time. I had like a hard time trying to understand what you were trying to explain me, and we arrived to the conclusion that what you are doing is like a highway, so the data can travel without any interference, and that's a technological solution, and that allows company monkey work. I think you describe it that way. What is monkey work?
Absolutely.
What does your company do with monkey work?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So we want to eliminate the monkey work, right? We don't want someone to just take a file here and put the file there, and I'm going to grab this thing here and put it there, right? Those tasks don't add value, right? You're not using your intelligence, your knowledge, your talent if you're just passing files or shuffling stuff around, right? And so that highway that Maria mentions is like through an API or through a connection, we can connect with different platforms, right? So like we also do that for Lufthansa and Hilton. We connect into up to 4 or 5 different platforms, like their e-commerce platform, their CMS, their booking engine, and we create that highway so that all the content can be done manually, right? Or automatically, right? Not manually. So if you think of someone who needs to update an offer on a page, they go into the website, they update that offer in English, and then they press a button that says send to translate, and they pick the languages, and magically it goes off to us. We work with all the translators and reviewers or copywriters, and then that content gets sent back, but it's put in each of the relevant pages for each language. And so it saves the internal teams tons of time.
So no hundreds of mails with hundreds of different versions. And no, I sent you the last one. No, I'm sending you the last one. So this is what your company does. And what about chatbots? Do you have the offer do you offer to companies chatbots?
Yeah, so we work with a division in our company called Data Force that actually helps with data training and any type of artificial intelligence. That's the same artificial intelligence, for example, that you might be using with machine translation, which is what a lot of people think of when they think of our company. But we also use it together with humans, like human annotators, to create and review content to actually improve machine learning engines. And so for the chatbots, we can provide multilingual chatbots. We can help you localize or translate your chatbot. And actually specifically to the travel industry, which is a really interesting point, is that with Review Pro, who we recently held a mini series of videos, they told us that 63% of incoming queries were from the same 8 questions. 8 questions. So, and actually, I went back through the data with them the other day, and 91% of the queries came from 18 questions. So essentially, the same 20 questions come up over and over and over again. And really, if you can just help get those people to find those answers quickly, you don't even really need to be involved as a human, customer service agent.
So I'm curious, what kind of questions are these 18 or 80 questions that summarize 80% of the questions humans have when they interact with these companies? I don't know if you can give us an example.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the exact answer to that, and I suppose that it's changed a lot since COVID. But from my personal experience, I would, and things I've read or discussed with them, you have to imagine something like, the check-in times, the opening hours of the restaurants, if they have any type of facilities like spas or pools when they're open, etc. So these are the typical really common questions that you get often that, can be answered very quickly if the person knows where to look.
So here we have in a very interesting social and academic debate that is related about what is going to happen with the future of work. We have some people in the academia that are explaining that machines are going to end with human work. We have other opinions that think that machines are going to help humans to have better lives. We have the third opinion that thinks that machines are going to end up with low-skilled jobs and will have a more qualified workforce. From your experience, what are the trends? What is happening, for example, in your company? How language is supposed to be one of the main characteristics of humans, like language make us different from animals. So what is happening in this interaction between machines and human beings in your specific company, in this specific context that is your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So the AI discussion has been one that's been going on for a very long time. I've been working in the localization or translation industry, more commonly known, for almost 10 years now, actually over 10 years now. And it's always been a comment. Even my own husband says, Kayla, you're going to be out of a job soon, because he reads some fancy article on Google about how the Google glasses are going to do interpretation in real time, and I'm going to lose my job. And I would actually contradict that, right? I would say, from my personal experience at my company, I think the two things are very complementary, right? I think that AI is specifically for translation content is a productivity tool, right? And we at TransPerfect really, or translations.com, really separate and categorize different types of content, right? So think about if you have really high quality, high visible marketing, branded content that needs to transmit a specific message, that's probably not going to be done well with machine translation, right? No matter how good the machines are. Maybe one day in my lifetime I'll see it with my grandkids, but But then you have other content that's actually very good for machine translation, right? So think of like manuals, very repetitive content. Think about contracts that always have the same, you know, templates and content or clauses, and then they just changing dates or small information. So the way we've seen it is we've been incorporating it to allow the machines to do the stuff that they're very good at. And then in the middle, there's like a hybrid area, right, where a machine can do a first pass and we can have humans review it to make it better. And that also talks on a lot of things about speed, time to market, and costs, right? So that's an area that there's a lot of savings and that has actually been used a lot during COVID. And then you have really highly branded content for marketing, for sales, for call to actions, taglines. And that content is so far away from being able to be used by by machine translation or, you know, any type of AI. And so I think that, you know, there's room for everyone on the spectrum.
So I was reading early this morning, because I read the newspaper. First thing I do is read the newspaper, that artificial intelligence has hard times interpreting emotions like irony, like they don't know if the person is lying, they don't know if the person is happy. I mean, I don't know if you are dealing with the same problems when you are using chatbots. I don't know what kind of technological challenges you have when using chatbots or tools that are automatized by machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So chatbots, I mean, depending on what the end objective of the chatbot is, it can be very different, right? So going back to the example that if 8 questions or 63% of the queries that you get, right, the objective of my chatbot, if I were the owner of the hotel, is to answer people's questions, right? And there was another stat in Business Insider recently that I believe it said 45% of consumers don't care if they interact with a human or a chatbot as long as the service is effective, right? So let's go back to that. Like, what's the objective of the chatbot? I don't want to write in a chatbot, or I don't want to call down to reception if I have to listen to press 1 for dry cleaning, press 2 for the pool, you know. I want to get, if I get a chatbot or, you know, a recording, I want it to be effective. If I want to have fun, if I want to make a laugh, if I want to ask you, you know, at the concierge desk, what's the coolest restaurant around here that has, you know, fusion food, or what's the kind of place around here that would have local music and maybe live band? Like, that's the kind of content that I would want from a human, right? And I would want human interaction on that content, but I would want, or potentially be happy with, AI interaction where I can get the answers quickly, and I don't want, you know, like you were saying, that subtlety, that humor, that, you know, that human contact. So I think it's important to keep in mind always when we're talking about AI and its use cases is, what's the end goal, right? What's the objective of why I want to use AI in any type of my processes, right? And it should be essentially to help make you more effective. So just to like summarize, if I have 3 agents in my call center and you're getting 20 queries a day and they have to answer all those queries one by one, they're not going to be as effective. But if the chatbot answers over half of those with one message, that means that the questions that are more specific or that need a personalized touch can be answered, and people can actually spend time with those clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes complete sense. And that's a great example. Maybe we can talk, we were talking previously about, for example, the kind of content that can be translated by machines and the one that cannot, that are humans. And we were talking about destinations. I remember that conversation, that there are some parts in the web page of the destinations that should be done by humans, and there are other types of things that can be done by machines. I don't know if we can explain this to our public, because I think it's a great example of what you just said about this distinction between machine and human work.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple examples, you know, if the brand or company that you work with, I don't really know. I didn't get the chance to survey all of you global people that I get to speak to today. If you're working with a website that is driven by sales, so you're tracking through your Google Analytics or your statistics, your traffic, your data, your conversion, it's quite easy to create a business case around what content should be done with humans versus with machine, right? And a lot of times we talk about nowadays of, I need all the content to be in all the languages and all the places for SEO reasons. But Google's algorithm has actually really evolved, and the way that it works is that it actually wants content that people care about, right? And that people interact with. So specifically now during like post-COVID times, there's so much content on the internet or the websites for travel companies specifically that's not being looked at because people can't travel, right? So if we're to look at your data, we can use like the Pareto principle, right? I'm saying that kind of in Spanish, Pareto principle of the 80-20 rule, right? There's usually, whether it be products, destinations, or even content on a page, a hotel description page, there's about 20% of the content that is most looked at, versus 80% that isn't. And so if we can look at data, like we can gather business intelligence through your Google Analytics, your traffic, your partner pages, your actual sales, we can decide, or you can decide, as a company, what content makes most sense. And we would say that, if there's a certain threshold where people aren't even visiting the site, human people aren't visiting and using the site, like there's a good opportunity to maybe do human machine translation or machine translation with human review, depending on how branded your content is. I mean, if you think about, for example, like destination marketing organizations, they really don't have a way to monetize the content, right? So they're not able to say like, oh, I booked 10 rooms, or I sold 10 flights. Like it's more about attracting people to their destinations, right? And so that's a great example where historically destination marketing companies have used machine translation and potentially maybe just have human review the most important pages or the campaigns or the banners and combine those two. And that's a great example of that.
And that you are working in this company, in translation.com, plans for the future from your point of view with digitalization in companies. I think it's obviously increasing, but I don't know what is your point of view. What are you seeing? What, for example, in the case of the tourist sector, how are they implementing these solutions? They are reluctant, or after COVID they see like they have to do it. What is your impressions about that?
I think that it's challenging right now. During COVID, I think many companies have been forced into an obligated or mandatory digital transformation. Now, whether or not that means they did it correctly because of the, the pressure to do it in such a quick time is another story. But I think that as we come out of COVID, companies will be very, very critical to see what type of efficiencies they can obtain through different tools. And I think before, where we were like, go, 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 now everyone's had a moment to stop and think. And where are there inefficiencies in my process? Where are there areas of improvement? And also having the time, as I mentioned before, to be curious, to research what's out there, what's available, what tools are other companies using to benchmark, and how can I plug those into my platforms or my processes to make them more effective? And again, automation of any type of process that is imposing manual work on your human labor, that should be the first checkbox, right? Like if it's just involving people moving things, making clicks, and it doesn't add value, like those are the first things you should look at optimizing, and that I know that some of my own clients are actually doing. They're looking at them with a very critical eye.
And how is workers in that areas reacting when your company arrives and say, okay, we are going to end up with this monkey work? What kind of reactions? They think it's not possible? they like it, or they don't like it at the beginning, but they like it afterwards? And what about CEOs? How are they? How are they positioned about these processes?
So I'll start with the CEOs, because I think that that's the easier question, the management, right? From upper management, they're the ones that have the zoom out and the big picture, and they're seeing, where there's areas for improvement. So when they do buy into an idea, whether it be, an e-commerce platform, a PIM, a CMS, an automation tool for marketing automation, they're understanding that in a mid to long term, that's going to have a huge return on investment, right? I think that regarding the people, and to your point before about academia, like, we're not trying to get rid of their job. What we're trying to do is give them more space to do things that add more value, whether that be, creatively, whether that be writing the campaigns, thinking about them strategically, analyzing the data, right? Having time to stop after you launch the campaign and look at that data, and what does this data tell me? Was this campaign successful? Was it not? How can we do it better next time? And that's the things we talked about before. That's the critical thinking. That's the emotional intelligence. That's the creativity, right? And those are the things that the humans have that the automation or the AI doesn't have. And so there is resistance to change, right? Every person on the planet is resistant to change initially, right? But change is the only constant. And so I think once people open their minds and they realize, okay, like, let me give this an opportunity. And we have, hundreds of case studies where people have implemented our technology. And you're right, at the beginning, like, this isn't possible. We're going to have to go back to the old way. But in the end, they see that the workflows work. And if they actually believe in them and they try to implement them, they work well. And so once that happens, they're able to do all of these other things that before they were tied up, with the click, 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 and the sending, here's my version, oh no, version 15, oh no, version 15.2, like that just wasn't sustainable before. And so I think that's normal. People are resistant to change. No one wants to change, or, we're afraid of the unknown. But I think that goes back again to the curiosity and being willing to explore and learn new things.
And how can we, universities and faculties like mine, can help companies like you to make this change? When we are speaking and talking to our students about these trends that are not that you cannot stop, what kind of expectations do you have, or what kind of relations would you like to have with universities? In this case, with a tourist university like mine.
Yeah, I think
maybe it's
no, go ahead.
No, I think maybe it's like a tricky question, because how can we make these links so people can feel more comfortable when they are starting and beginning their career?
Yeah, absolutely.
In this context that everything is changing, that maybe what you learned two years ago is not working anymore. So what kind of soft skills and what kind of technological knowledge do we have to teach so they can feel comfortable as professionals? What kind of professional are you looking for in your company?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That's a great question. I just think that there's a lot of different parts, right? So I think that it's very critical, like you were just saying, to teach that, the industry and the world, we've been proven last year that it's very fluid, like it changes often. And I think that it also is very repetitive, right? History repeats itself, and the things we are going through now are not new, they're not new challenges. They're just, a version of a challenge that's been around through history, right? Whether you look back at the Romans or, there have been plagues and there have been pandemics. And so I guess I'm maybe being repetitive, but I guess just that, being up to date, you know, that skill of like, I was told very early on by one of my mentors at TransPerfect, you know, to read the Financial Times. And I thought, that's such an interesting thing for my boss to tell me. But it was so important, right? Like just reading the news every morning, reading the headlines, learning what was going on in, you know, financial and in the business world. That is something that wasn't really specifically for me, right? But it helped me understand what was happening. So, for example, just staying up to date, I think, you know, with trends, like, you know, reading local news, reading, you know, innovative news. I think also, and I've done some with Ostelea, so I know you do them, but I think continuing to do events where you bring in, you know, technology startups, where you bring in innovative speakers, where, you know, people can learn about different aspects of the ecosystem, because a lot of us think like, okay, it's travel, it's hotels, airlines, you know, rentals and cars, and there's kind of, and it's
everything
so much more than that.
It's
so much more. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that, you know, just staying up to date, you know, that curiosity. I think you mentioned also in what you just said about being flexible, right? Like understanding that, and that goes to the technology, right? Like what might have worked last year or 2 years ago maybe doesn't work now, or maybe we need to find a better way to do it now. And I also think that teaching students and actually any type of professional to lead, you know, just being ready and willing to lead and be, you know, thought-provoking and ask smart questions. Like we want people to come into our companies, into our teams that help us challenge the status quo. Like, why do we do it that way? You know, could we do it better? Here's a suggestion on how to do it better, you know, and really kind of push us to go out of our comfort zone. So I think that was a few things. I don't know if that was a good, complete answer to your question.
That's very interesting, because like a couple of days ago, I was talking with an important CEO of an important company in the hotel sector, and she was telling me exactly the same. We need people with critical thinking. I mean, people who ask important questions and smart questions. Maybe that is more important than giving us a solution right away. I mean, we need people who can, that is able to ask questions. Yeah. To raise their hand.
They raise their hand and they say, hey, I saw this, you know, something doesn't fit, or I want to question it, or I want to know why, because I think, you know, this, and like you said, maybe they don't have the solution, but by raising their hand, other people can look at the problem and try to think of a solution too.
But this is a very interesting change of paradigm, because business school like mine, we used to taught people and tell them that somehow in the old times you have to obey, you know, like you hierarchy, and to know what is your role and always be willing to please your boss and so on. And nowadays we are in a different context where companies need people to be more active in questioning things, and I think this is a very, very interesting change in company relations with the workers and how they are relating with their CEOs. And
I think that to your point, I don't think that raising your hand or asking smart questions or bringing ideas to the table necessarily is, you know, mutually exclusive with following hierarchy, you know, or being respectful of your managers. You know, for me, those, I don't think that those have to be separate, right? I think you can still do those things and be respectful and have a team, but, you know, at the same time, in a respectful manner, bring up ideas and discuss them, you know, and say, hey, you know, I think that to your point, you don't have to have a solution, but you can't, maybe the change is, we don't want you to come and complain to us, right? Nobody wants you to come and bring me 15 problems. Like I deal with problems, I have my own problems, my team has their problems. But if you bring something thoughtful to me where you thought about it and you think there's a way to resolve it, maybe your way isn't perfect, but you come with an idea, that at least shows me that you've had initiative, right? And that like that I would be willing to listen to that, right?
So I think now we can chat, and we can, yeah, talking about asking questions. we can go and maybe some of our public and audience want some questions. You can chat them and we'll read them for you. So you can we can have a more interactive part of the presentation now. So I think
right.
we have
Opening the chat here.
opening the chat.
Any questions? Oh, I saw someone from Denmark. Henrik, welcome. Thanks for joining. Alba
I
from
think
New
we
York.
have, let me see. Angel says, Maria, would you say depend very much to the company culture that the person is working? I think he's talking about hierarchies. How do you set this mindset of bringing a question to the table? Each country has a different hierarchy or power distance. It's not the same in Sweden that in Medellin. That's true. And here it's another very important, that it's the context. Do you think, even we are working, a lot of companies are working globally. What do you think, how important is context? I mean, can you have the same process in Medellin and in Sweden, where culture and hierarchies are different when you are dealing with different companies with different cultures? What do you do? Like, how do you deal with these different aspects related with values?
It is true that in different cultures there are different, norms. I would say that even as a company, we do provide cultural consulting. So when people are moved to, expats to different countries, or different cultures that are very, extremely different from the ones they're from, we can provide cultural consulting on that. And I would say that to some degree, that is absolutely true if you want to, if you're going into a very large organization with a large team and you need to understand how that dynamic would work if you're very from outside of it. However, I would also say that in the end, we're all human, right? And one of the things I say in a lot of my presentations is it's not B2B or B2C or whatever, like it's human to human, and it's not you to your boss or you to, the CEO. It's, and we've all probably heard the stories of people, especially in hospitality, that start in a, front desk position and they work their way up to be in the top management, right? I think that it goes back to what I said at the beginning about how you have to spend some time and reflect on what it is and how you want to present it, right? Like, again, you can't just go up and throw a problem at someone and say, go deal with this problem or complain, right? But I think if I would gamble to say that if anyone, found a problem or had an idea and they thought about it and they explained why it doesn't work or why it could help improve the guest experience or productivity or whatever, and they showed that to their manager or someone within the organization, I think the organization would be, in a bad position if they didn't listen to it, So I think it's just more about, how you execute it. So I think, and most of you are going to know within your culture, within your organization, the best way. But a lot of times we just want it like, oh, we want it to be fixed, right? We just magically, it needs to go away. But it's that effort, it's that work where you have to, figure out what the problem is and how you're going to present it in a way that will be well received.
So I think Margit Miller says that critical thinking and brainstorming is key, but how do you get the boss to understand that?
How do you get them to understand that when you're trying to present like an idea or a change?
Yes.
I think that, yes, she said yes. I think it's very similar to what I just said, right? I think if you're thoughtful on the way you're bringing the ideas, so a couple ideas, like I'll just throw out there. If you can benchmark against other brands or companies, right? If you can present an ROI, right? If you can use data to be critical. If you can get, whether that be through a survey, through guest experience, questionnaires, it can be like, you have to support whatever it is that you're trying to present, right? You can't just take it to someone and say, hey, I think it would be good that we, you know, hire this person because they're very nice. Or I think we need to offer everyone in our company free cookies, right? Because people are going to be like, okay, well, great, but why? You know, why should we do that? And the higher you get up in organizations, the sooner you realize that the same way that the CEO was more on board with implementing technology than, you know, the project manager, is because they're looking at the larger picture, right? And they're looking at how the information can help the company improve or be healthier or more profitable. And in the end, that results, you know, in more jobs and more growth.
I think presenting data is one of the key aspects, because it's very difficult for a company, at least from my experience as a CEO, to make decisions if they don't see it with data. So feeling comfortable with data and presenting it is, I think, it's a critical part of making a big and good argument. And
Baher is asking a question. Baher, can you confirm what is SLV? I just want to confirm. Is it single language vendor? I mean, I work in translation, so that's what my assumption is, but it might be a travel acronym as well. Yeah, okay. Fabulous. So his question is, you know, working at like a translation company or a single language vendor, when there are issues, you know, from other departments that there's no solutions provided, that they just throw out a problem, how do we change that? I think that that's a great question even for travel and tourism, right? If you think about customer service or, you know, being in any type of situation where you're confronted with a problem, let's go back specifically to an internal problem, right? So a different department throws a problem to you. What I would always ask is, like, you kind of can play to their ego, right? So you can think of different ways, like, hey, so I know it depends on who you're working with, but say if it's from a production team or, you know, a technology team, you can say, hey, well, I know that you know, have the most experience in this area. Are there any suggestions that you would recommend as a first option, right, to whatever the problem? And if not, like, and if you don't know what the answer is, you know, I would say you should probably involve your manager or someone on your team, you know, maybe to brainstorm, hey, this happened to me. What are a couple things, you know, has this ever happened to you? What are a couple things you've done in the past? And then if not, what I always say, again, like, just try to meet up with that person. You know, don't forget the human touch. Like, if you just give them a call or a Skype call or a video call and say, hey, you know, thank you so much. And this is actually a really great tactic for negotiation and customer service. So everyone who's still listening, take a note. Anytime anyone gives you feedback, whether it be a problem, criticism, you know, an issue with a project, whatever it might be, you should always start by saying, thank you. Thank you for that feedback, or thank you for raising my attention to this problem. Because what it allows you to do, this is actually from a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's an FBI negotiator. And what that does is it puts the other person in, like, non-defensive mode, right? Because you just said, oh, thank you for giving me that feedback. It's important, or that's helpful, or thank you for bringing that to my attention. I want to try to address that. And so it is a good book. Thank you, MT. And so I think that, you know, sometimes instead of trying to figure out, like, whose fault it is or who's the problem, it's just about saying, like, hey, thank you for that. Like, now let's try to find a solution together. And that will get you a long way a lot of time. Do you agree, Maria, even in academia?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this is something that we should taught our students, like how to negotiate and how to bargain also in conflict situations, because sometimes we think that as a CEOs, we are not going to confront any uncomfortable situation, and life is full of uncomfortable situations, and we have to know how to deal with them and to have the soft skills. And I think there is something that you can train. It's not natural. I mean, I think we can learn how to deal with these kind of situations. And yeah, I completely agree. Case example. Angel, so from who? Angel said, case example. So from whom is the data belong to? A tourist is in contact with a hotel in Spain that uses translations i.e. services from transfer. I has a conversation with the tourist. The data of that conversation is from whom? Tourist, hotel, trans.
That's a very good question. I am
We
not
didn't talk about the owners of the data, and that's also a very, very important academic and social debate.
Yeah, actually, the last event I was at Ostelea was about copyrights, which we brought this up. But yeah, so basically it depends on the agreement, which I know is an easy answer, but it depends, and I can give you some examples, right? So, for example, you have public or shared machine translation engines, right? In artificial intelligence engines that are working on several different types of things. So if you think of Google, like Google gets all sorts of content from all sorts of sectors and different areas. We might specifically have a travel and tourism engine, and that can be licensed a certain way. But there might be clients specifically where the client says, no, I want you to build an engine just for me. It's my engine, it's my intellectual property, and I'm going to train it, and that's my data, right? So it's not the tourist. I mean, the same way that you always have to, accept the cookies and all the terms and all of these things we sign up for, whatever the platform they're using, or like whoever the hotel or, is licensing their platform, like that would be the platform that would hold the data. And then the machine translation engine, whether it be one of our shared engines or whether it be a license or created specifically for a client, that would be two different answers. So I don't know if that was super helpful, but it gives you an idea, right? Thank you guys for the questions. I love this. It's so interactive today.
I don't know if we have any more questions.
I think, well, while someone else types me a great question to end on, I would say that another thing that came to mind when we were talking, Maria, about the machine translations, for example, is machine translations or artificial intelligence is, in my sector, for example, is allowing people to use AI on high volume content, and then that might save them a big chunk of their budget. And then on that chunk of their budget that they save, they're able to use it for more high quality content, right? So instead of high volume, I want high quality content. And before, maybe if I had 5 languages and I had €5, I would spend €1 on each language. But going back to the 80-20 rule, if 2 of those languages create 80% of my revenue, I want to spend the 80% on those 2 languages and the 20% on the remaining, right? And so thinking about it, and I actually wrote an article in Hosteltour last year about thinking strategically about how to leverage artificial intelligence or different tools to maximize your budget and the outcome, right? So not always just going to if I do Spanish, I have to add Spanish for all my websites, or if I add French, I have to do all my hotels, right? Looking at it with a critical thinking, right? As we said before, that critical thought, and using the data to decide how we implement the budget to get the maximum ROI. And I think that's something that, as kind of a commodity service, people don't think about when you think about translations, but there's a lot you can do to really, leverage and get the most bang for your buck, so to say.
Because I think, like you were talking when we were talking like last week, we were talking about these different types of content, and I was really excited about this different. And for example, if I have to decide on my work, in my daily work, what can I translate by a machine? And I mean, I have to be trained to do that. I mean, and I was thinking, okay, maybe we should start a course with our students so they can think and introduce this kind of logic when they are going to be managers, because I don't think these kind of questions are taught nowadays. I mean, because it's another way of thinking and another way of building budgets. And
well, and
for
I
example,
think, not to say to work with me by any means, like, but I think that a lot of times too, we need to take advice from the market, right? Like there are people that are experts in these areas, you know, and most of the time they'll give you free consulting calls or free first meetings and try to really understand it, right? What happens a lot of times is someone who has no idea or no experience will make up some story in their head out of this great plan, and then they bring it to me and they want me to execute it. And no matter what I say at that point, like no matter what best practices or case studies or industry reference material I might share, they just want me to take this plan and make it happen, right? And so sometimes I think it's that also about being open, right? And willing to learn and willing to listen, you know, and I think listening is also a very critical skill nowadays. You know, listening to hear the person, not listening so that you can wait to respond to them.
Okay, we'll incorporate listening to our soft skill learning program, because I also think it's critical. Because sometimes when you're trying to explain to our customers that something cannot be done, because when you take this plan and you try to make it real, there are a lot of steps that they were not planned in that project they have. And sometimes they don't listen, or maybe that you need more time, or you know, or more budget and so on. And I think I completely agree with you. I'm thinking about some examples now in my daily life. Like it's difficult sometimes to make dialogue with people who doesn't have who are running their business with different logics. So
Absolutely.
I think,
absolutely.
yeah. So I don't know if anyone wants to ask any more questions. No? No?
We're going to finish right on time.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Well, I'll take a moment then to say thank you so much, Maria and Ostelea. I wore my green jacket today in honor of Ostelea. It was really a pleasure, and I am so grateful that you invited me here and to be able to speak to so many people around the world. I do recommend, if any of you have any follow-up questions or would like to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Kayla Madsen Lopez from Transperfect or translations.com. Just mention that you heard me speaking today, because I don't answer normally if people make a request without making a message. So include in your notes that you heard me here today, and I would be glad to follow up with you.
We have a very last question from Miguel Raskin, that he's our student. Miguel, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi, Miguel.
Well, Miguel can speak.
Yeah, I can. Well, just to finish, like a summary of all that has been said, and also to clarify my view of this of this meeting. I mean, how could me as a possible manager of a hotel could match all this EI technology, is artificial intelligence, into this business, apart from having a web page that can be written by read by any foreign different language, that apart from Spanish.
Yeah, great question, Miguel. Thank you. There are lots of tools nowadays, right? If you look into like operational side of the hotel, whether that be the tools that you have for house cleaning or food and beverage, for managing the restaurants and scheduling, there are really powerful tools around that too, Also, if you look at brands, like I mentioned before, Review Pro, but anything around like guest experience, how you're capturing their information before, while they're on premise, and after they leave, and looking at that whole circle. I just read this morning actually that a Spanish startup called Stay My Way was contracted by Accor Hotels for contactless key cards. So it's all done through your mobile phone. So you can check in on your phone, you upload your passport, you take a selfie, it sends you the key, your key opens the door, so you don't have to touch the door. Like for example, now with COVID and safety and contactless, you can put the do not disturb from your phone because everything is digital now. And that's just like one example, but like there's so many amazing examples. That's why I said it's so important to, be reading and networking and just staying up to date. I mean, there's some really great podcasts, and other news outlets and media outlets that talk about these types of things, but look for the sections on innovation or startups. Those are always great places.
And it's important that if you want to know more about these digitalization solutions for hotels and for tourist sector, you can come to every and each session we have planned during this year, so you can learn from professionals who are implementing digital solutions in the companies and ask them directly what they are doing. In fact, next month we are going to have Manuel Hernandez, founder of Custobi, and he's going to explain us what kind of digital solutions they are offering to the hotel and to the tourist sector. And I invite you all to come here next month and to talk with him as we are talking now with Kayla.
Thank you. Really appreciate that invitation and all the information that you just said. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question on the mic. I love that.
Yeah, I think you can also ask questions in the mic if you want. Maybe we can have just a last question, and I don't know if anyone wants to ask just the last question. Someone?
We got a lot of thank yous, and
thank you, but maybe.
Gracias, grazie. I don't translate. Don't worry, guys.
Well, so maybe we can end here our conversation with Kayla. Thank you very much, Kayla, for coming and share with us your experience.
My pleasure.
Okay, Angel is saying something. Maybe we can say it. Angel, he said, just a question for you, Maria. Hi, Maria. Thank you for organizing this conference. Maybe it would be interesting to have a debate with students from different universities about this topic. And okay, Angel, just contact me and we can organize this kind of meetings and maybe with professionals from the sector like Kayla.
Yeah, and actually, I forgot to mention, Maria, really quick, for the 20 people that are still here, TransPerfect is hiring. We have over 50 openings right now worldwide outside of the United States at our company. And you don't have to be a translator or a linguist to work at our company. We have everything from sales to IT to help desk to customer service to our AI division to HR, admin, So have a look at our website. It's just transperfectcareers.com. I wanted to mention that because I know a lot of people are looking for jobs.
That's great news for our students. Thank you, Kayla. I hope to see you soon in some of our meetings and in our.
I will tune in.
I always learn a lot from you, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. It's very kind. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.